Hello and welcome to this very special broadcast on DD India. DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Well, India recently played host to world's second largest energy conclave, which saw the announcement of largest ever exploration bid around, while charting path for green energy transition and strengthening international partnerships as well. At the conclusion of the India Energy Week 2025, India cemented its positioning and India cemented its branding as global energy leader. So India's energy transition strategy is focused towards sustaining and promoting energy engagements with hydrocarbon-rich countries and also aligning with some prominent international organizations that are dealing with energy matters or matters related to energy. So in this, we can't really lose sight as how secure India's growing energy needs are. On this special broadcast, we will examine following aspects of India's energy sector and its prowess, particularly aligning them with Viksit Bharat Vision or Developed India 2047 and how India is charting its course to lead the global energy future. So on the show, we ask is India's policy goal for energy transition? What are India's policy goals for energy transition? What are the elements of policy market environment and desired objectives? We also examine what is India's current energy mix and how does it look like? How does India achieve dual energy goals? What all have we achieved so far? The trajectory. What is India's decarbonization roadmap ahead? What's the forward plan? And also, what is India's energy transition strategy? What is the near future of the fossil fuels? We'll be examining that with the subject experts. With that roadmap for ensuring modern energy, its accessibility and availability. How can we ensure cost effectiveness in energy transition in a country like India? And how is India developing required supply chain linkages? What is the plan there? And should India upscale its green hydrogen policies? And finally, last but not the least, critical role of South-South cooperation in energy sector. We are going to touch upon a bit of diplomacy also there as we move forward. And like I said, that this broadcast is special because we are joined by some globally recognized and distinguished voices who will be talking about how India's voice matters in redefining global energy dialogue. Okay. In our Delhi studio, we have Mr. Shishir Priyadarshi, former director, World Trade Organization. Such a pleasure having you, sir, on the show. Also joining me from Prayagraj on this special broadcast is Upendra Tripathi. Thank you very much, sir. Founding director, ISA and former secretary in the Ministry of
the energy transition being also fair and just. It's extremely important that while we work towards our goals of zero net emission, we don't forget the need for just transition and for secure transition.
Okay. Having said that, let me take this thought to Tripathi, sir. As a founding director general of ISA, what global energy role do you envision or envisage as far as ISA by 2047 is concerned, and that aligning with our Viksit Bharat vision?
That's a very good question, Madam. In fact, 2047, India's population will be 1.7 billion. And by that time, our industrial requirement of power, requirement from the building sector, requirement from commercial sector, even for public consumption, So building, industries, commercial, transportation, India will need a huge quantity of energy. In fact, it should be some 3 times the installed capacity of 460 gigawatt we have now. Coal is still going to be there, analysis has been done. But Government of India have announced 1,800 gigawatts of renewables by 2047. So today, if you look, the per capita consumption of energy of an Indian is 1/3 of the global average, somewhere around 1,200 kilowatt hour against a global average of 3,400. Now, by 2047, India's requirement is so huge, and that is why in the Energy Week, we're talking about 100 gigawatt of atomic energy. And Prime Minister Modi in the USA is talking about, the SMRs,
Correct.
modular reactors. So the point is that by 2047, because our population being 1.7 billion, our requirement of energy will be so high that we have to have a
Yes.
variety of things in place. And we are in the right direction when we say that 1,800 gigawatt of renewables, 100 gigawatt of atomic energy will be in the basket.
Okay. Considering the burgeoning energy needs in near future that you pointed out, Mr. Tripathi, I'm taking this question to Shishir sir. So in that case, what role will green hydrogen will play in global energy platform by 2047?
Sakal, building on what Mr. Tripathi said, I think it's an important factor. If you look at our energy demand for, let's say, 2047, you're looking at a figure probably in excess of about, maybe around 2,400 gigawatts in all. And also, if you look at the kind of additional energy capacity that we've built up in the past 10 years. Now, even though 75% of that additional energy capacity has probably come from renewable, we now have a very, close to about 46% of our total capacity coming from renewable. But still, 25% addition did come from fossil fuels. Now, when we're looking at numbers which are in excess of 2,000 megawatts additional capacity, then you will have to focus far more, not entirely, but far more on solar and wind. Because green hydrogen, while important, and green hydrogen, while we obviously need to focus on it, will, as things stands now, will contribute a very small percentage as we move ahead. But it's also important to realize that green hydrogen today is where solar energy was maybe 15 years ago. Lots of skeptics around, lots of people questioning the costs. And yet, if we look back now, we find that solar energy, cost of panels have gone down, cost of production of solar electricity has gone down, and therefore, that is the reason why our solar production capacity has gone up about 30 times in the last 10 years.
My God.
So we've got to concentrate on the electrolyzers as far as green hydrogen is concerned. But I think we've got to focus far more on solar and wind, and perhaps, as was just mentioned, on nuclear energy too.
Right. So, Mr. Tripathi, what according to you is India's current energy mix, and how does it really reflect India's dual goals? The goals of ensuring energy security, that has been a top priority, and also, marching forward towards commitment of zero net emission.
In fact, I can say, and always I used to tell that the sun god is a very great democrat. He doesn't discriminate between rich countries, poor countries, poor or rich, village or town. So if we are talking about access to electricity, solar is a very good medium. In fact, Honorable Prime Minister's program today of creating 30 gigawatt of rooftop-based solar energy only means it is more accessible to the rural masses. And number two, if you look, nobody can tax sunlight, neither import duty, nor export duty, nor taxes. Still, it is a public good, free, and very much predictable. So now these two things, unlike any other fossil fuel, which is insecure at critical times, solar is not, even wind is not, and even a variety of renewable energy is not. So renewable energy by 2047 is going to be a very critical part of the India's energy basket, and it is very safe also. And today, India exports around $1 billion worth of solar products. And given the international position, India may, in fact, may like to export more and more. At the same time, it could deploy more and more. And our internal demand, because of the demography, is so high. It's a huge market for energy itself.
Okay. So is that the reason, Mr. Priyadarshi, that this year's budget has provided a policy thrust, a massive push for small modular reactors or SMR that Tripathi sir talked about? And do you think with that, nuclear energy can be an important, perhaps is already an important element for India's energy transition strategy, given the concerns that are related to its safety?
Look, I think nuclear energy is a very, very important area and needs to be the focus of our energy mix and of the energy development over the next, maybe a decade and a half. Now, we've got a very ambitious goal of 100 gigawatts. But, it's first, before we get into that, I think it's important to realize what are the big advantages of nuclear energy, especially coupled with wind and solar. The base load of wind and solar combined, and that too on an aggregate basis, rarely crosses 50%. So 50% of the time you don't have either wind or solar. On the other hand, nuclear energy could easily give you a base load of 90%. And that will become an absolute essential if you've got to balance the grid with the fluctuations that come about with wind and solar. The one thing I think a big change is going to come about is with these small modular reactors.
Okay.
Now, what we often don't know, and I must admit, even though I'm a physics student, but I also found out only after reading more recently, the greatest thing about a small modular reactor is you could build it on site, you could put your nuclear energy capsules in it, you can seal it, and then it doesn't require to be open for the next 10 years. So you can actually construct it and transport it to any region or any particular entity which requires, let's say, 300 megawatts. And that is what your SMR would give. But the very important thing, I think, is without private sector participation, it will simply be impossible to meet the kind of needs that we feel it should be met. And private sector would happily come in. Private sector would come in. But what you would probably need to do is modify, one, the Atomic Energy Act to allow private sector into nuclear production, to step in.
Yes.
And second, very importantly, there is also the Civil Liability because of Nuclear Damage Act.
Yes.
And I think that too would also need to be.
And the security and safety aspect
but
associated
if you can do that, nuclear energy has the lowest emission amongst anything.
So is nuclear energy the new future? Mr. Tripathi, your thoughts?
Yeah, in fact, I support CC when he talked about the nuclear energy providing a base load, balancing the grid. But today, a big issue before the world is that if, in case coal is phased out, actually, how do we meet the base load factor? And for India, I think the only practical solution will be to meet the base load from nuclear power, whether it's big ones or small ones. But today, if you talk about the USA, for example, big data companies, they are going for small and modular nuclear reactors. France, for example, entire country is managing through nuclear. So India has to have a good mix, and India's target of 100 gigawatt, I think, is in a very sound footing. And once we, get more and more of nuclear, also the cost factor will come down.
Okay.
And there are two more things I would like to point out here when we are talking about 2047. The current year's budget, they have done a mission on clean technology manufacturing, clean manufacturing. And then they have given 150,000 lakh crores to the state governments as a zero interest, 50-year period, payback period to develop energy infrastructure and other infrastructures per se. Now, these are the things that is making India move, giving a long-term plan up to 2047, which will, if you look at even past 5 years, India has created history in the mankind by providing energy access to maximum people in the human history. And this needs to be continued, and we are in the right trajectory to meet the huge demand I talked about by 2047.
Yes, sir.
Not only from, domestic requirement, but a variety of other things, yes.
And considering that you've handled this department earlier, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, how do you see India's push towards renewable energy now and of also achieving an installed capacity of 500 gigawatts, I think that you also spoke about earlier, of non-fossil fuels by 2030? I'm going to not take it to 2047, but let's say 2030.
No, in fact, India promised 100 gigawatt by 2022 because of COVID. We are late by 2 years. But the other day in January, I think 31st of January was a very special day and very proud day for myself personally, because we achieved that 100 gigawatt target which we had started. And 500 gigawatt is not a a big thing for a country like India. In fact, the other day I was telling that if we can identify 100,000 women or 100,000 youth who can be made as solar entrepreneurs, and we create good market conditions for them, 100,000 or is not a big number. 100,000 megawatt, 100 gigawatt is not a big thing. So India is a huge country, tremendous dynamism. So 500 gigawatt, although many people say India cannot achieve it at the rate of 50 gigawatts per year in the next 6 years, I'm very hopeful with dynamic planning. As Honorable Prime Minister is quite pro environment, pro solar, and it can be done. It's doable. Only thing, we have to come up with very innovative policies.
Okay. Now coming to the decarbonization roadmap, Mr. Priyadarshi, I think you already preempted my question, sir. So despite the decarbonization efforts, and we've seen the rise in renewables, fossil fuel still accounts for around 70% of India's electricity generation. Do you think in future to come, fossil fuels, especially the use of coal that we see for electricity generation and other energy needs, should be reduced to meet our roadmap, the decarbonization? How realistic and ambitious is this?
Look, it's good to have a very ambitious target. You work towards an ambitious target and then you achieve as high a goal as possible. I think doing away with coal would be an unrealistic thought at the moment. What we really need to do is factor in coal, reduce its contribution to the energy mix, but importantly find ways of making coal cleaner. For instance, thermal power plants use a lot of coal, there is a lot of emission, but if even to the extent of 25% we can use green ammonia in the mix which goes into coal, you have a much cleaner transmission. And therefore, I think it's extremely important in this that we don't lose sight of the fact that coal would be an important contributor. It would need to be reduced gradually. But solar, I think, is really what is important. I had the pleasure of very recently visiting what I think would become the world's largest solar plant, and that is Khavda in Gujarat, close to our border. And what I find there was, a size 5 times the size of Paris. Can you imagine? It's like a solar village converted into a town. Now, India has that capacity. And I think combined with nuclear and solar, and obviously to some extent wind, but much more solar and nuclear, while continuing our research and technical collaboration on things like green hydrogen, green ammonia, I think our energy mix or a transition is very much on course.
Okay. With that, Mr. Tripathi, what are your thoughts on India's energy transition, for the fact that it depends on also access to critical minerals that are essential for manufacturing your lithium-ion batteries, solar panels, etc. Though we know that lithium has been discovered in Jammu and Kashmir, it has been on news for a very long time, and I mean it's an old news, but still it is a news. We don't have local supply of enough critical minerals. Do you think that's a big challenge area?
See, India is aware of its strength and weakness in this critical mineral management area. That is why there are political collaborations to manage this. India has long-term plans as to have cobalt, lithium, and all that. But lithium battery, the cost is coming down drastically. That is number one. And number two, the lithium battery. In the lithium battery, the percentage of lithium is hardly 3%. But more than that, alternative batteries are coming up. For example, they're experimenting with sodium and all that. So I'm very optimistic that within the next 5 years, not only lithium cost will come down, but we will get alternative products also in the market. And number two, of course, as you correctly said, India has identified lithium mines somewhere in J&K and all that, and other countries are also trying to identify. And gradually, the efficient batteries we are managing, the role of, lithium will be there, but it will be manageable, and alternative products will come in the market.
Okay. Priyadarshi sir, so having said that, is India developing a required supply chain, so to say, or supply chain linkages with others for this critical mineral access, and whatever we are doing in this space, is that sufficient?
Look, probably if I be very frank and honest, I don't think it's sufficient.
Okay.
I think we could have got off the block much earlier. Excuse me. We are still trying to find different sources from which we could get critical minerals. Simply by comparison, and for no other reason, China is way ahead of us. And what we really need to do is build a relationship with countries from which we can source critical minerals, much beyond critical minerals. Like, for instance, suppose you look at Latin America. There are a number of countries there which have a very, very strong source of critical minerals. We need to engage them across fronts. We could have a defense collaboration, we could have a strategic collaboration, we could have a trade agreement, and then critical minerals, that supply becomes much more assured. But if we want to go into a country and just hope to get or import or extract critical minerals, that's not going to happen. What is very good is that the criticality of critical minerals is being recognized. And I think where we are today, we are leaps and bounds ahead of what we were, let's say, 2 years back. But genuinely, I wish we'd started even earlier.
Okay. Tripathi sir, one last question. In fact, it's sort of common question for both of you. Well, we know India has launched the National Green Hydrogen Mission in 2023 to sort of incentivize the commercial production of green hydrogen towards greening the economy, or for green economy. We saw that reflecting in the budget as well. What all space have we covered in this? Because this green economy seems to be one of the pivotal goalposts of the government when it comes to Viksit Bharat progression. Priyadarshi sir, and first, in fact, let Mr. Tripathi come in. And your final message, yes.
Sure. You know, a green hydrogen mission is, you know, that 19,400 crores from Government of India. We have made good progress in the R&D front, where the steel companies, you know, have taken up projects to find out how green hydrogen can be used in the difficult to reach sector, like difficult to reach in the, you know, heavier transportation sector, cement factories, steel. That research is going ahead. But globally, quite a few big companies have slowed down in the green hydrogen front because the cost is prohibitive. But as you know, even in solar, at some point when Honorable Prime Minister was Chief Minister of Gujarat, it was 19 rupees per kilowatt hour. Today it is, you know, 2.5 rupees or 3 rupees. So I'm sure that the same thing is going to happen in the front of, you know, in front of green hydrogen. But it will take a little time, and we do need not only more research into green hydrogen, we need standards, even storage standards. You know, we have that Institute of Explosive Security in Nagpur, and I understand that, you know, even storage of the pipes that carry hydrogen have to be built with separate standards, and we have to catch up with that. The low-hanging fruits, as my batchmate Shishir pointed out, you know, green ammonia, these are good things in the fertilizer front where we can use, but hardcore use, storage, transportation of green hydrogen requires a big ecosystem, which we are moving that way. But the whole world has to move that way if we are talking about decarbonization.
So that comes, Okay, finish your point, sir.
And my message is that for a country like India, it's not merely mitigation where we are going to meet our net zero goals, but we have to emphasize the adaptation side. Like, for example, we can achieve a lot of CO2 sequestration by going into agriculture, where the synthetic fertilizers have reduced the carbon content. So that is adaptation side will play a major role.
So the bottom line here is that we need, and the need of the hour rather, Mr. Priyadarshi, 30 seconds, I'm sorry, I have to wrap it up. But, you know, we need to upscale the green hydrogen policy.
I'll just leave you with one message, and I call it the PQRS of energy transition. A is access and affordability. But the most important message I want to leave you, which I call the PQRS of energy transition: P, you privatize on priority. Q, you ensure quality but do it quickly. R, you do your regulatory reforms no matter what is required. And S, ensure safety and security right through the chain.
Okay, so priority, quality, regulation and safety. Something which will in a long way, yeah, in a long way ensure the modern energy accessibility, availability and most importantly, the cost effectiveness of it.
Absolutely.
Such a pleasure talking to both of you on
you.
DD India, our national news broadcasters external.
I didn't tell you, we are batchmates.
Well, I've been told about that. I could see the camaraderie on air. Well, the energy was awesome, sir. Thank you so much. Mr. Priyadarshi.
Airport here. You know, it's a nice
Mr. Priyadarshi. Yes, Mr. Priyadarshi, thank you very much. Former Director WTO, and also thanking Upendra Tripathi, former Director General International Solar Alliance, and he's also been the Secretary with the Government of India in the concerned ministry. With that, it's time to wrap up this special broadcast, but news and updates continue on your channel, DD India. From me and my entire team, thanks for watching this special broadcast. We'll be back with more.